Hello, welcome to this next Substance Painter tutorial. In this tutorial I've got a little model that I was sort of playing with yesterday. I'll make it available for download in the description so you can follow along, but let's get started. So first of all, we'll load our model in. So we want to go new and select. I've got my little racery robot here. And yeah, everything else I think is good. I'm not using a tiled workflow for this, I'm just using materials. So we'll click OK. I'll let it come in. There we go. So there he is. He's a simple little model. He's nothing very particularly flashy. Let's go into 3D only. There we go. Just, you know, messing about on a, what was yesterday? Wednesday. Wednesday. It's between Christmas and New Year, so I have no idea what day it is. Okay, so let's go to texture sets and do a bake, and I'll bake it at my standard settings, and then we're going to have a look at the curvature and the opacity map, or the ambient occlusion map rather, to see if we need to make any adjustments. So that's baking away, shouldn't take too long. I've got quite a lot of textures on this one, so it's going to be a bit heavy on my machine. I'm using a 2048 texture set, but you can go down to 1024 just while you're working, and then raise it up later. Okay, so there we go. So let's go and change our channel. We want to have a look at ambient occlusion map, and that's not too bad actually. See, it's quite darkened in the places you'd expect, but I don't necessarily want it to be quite as much as that. So let's have a rebake. So we'll go to bake mesh maps. I'm going to deselect all maps and check the ambient occlusion, and on here we have a minimum occlusion distance, which I'm going to turn right down, and a max occlusion distance we're going to take to about halfway, and we'll see how that looks. Now, because I've got multiple materials, I need to apply that to all of them, otherwise it will only work on the arm material. The nice thing about that is you can adjust the settings for each of your material zones, so that you can have one which is a bit more expansive and you can have one which is a bit tighter. Right, so let's bake those and see what it looks like, and I'll attempt to fill while this is doing it. Shouldn't take that long. There we go, and click OK. Now I'm getting a little artifact down there. I know it's not there because as soon as I move the screen it will disappear. So I think that's perhaps a little cleaner. It's not quite so far down the arms, it's not going quite so far away there. So let's have a look at the curvature map. Curvature map's more or less what I would expect. We've got kind of little rims on the outside of the wheels there. My big wheels back here are a little bit weird, but I think I can cope with that. Yeah, I think that's okay. There's a little bit of oddness going up around here, but that's where I've got a really tight angle. So you see this is white pointing up and this is black pointing this way. That's just kind of indicating that there's quite a sharp angle there. One's going positive and one's going negative, but that's okay. I think we can cope with that. Okay, so let's go back to our material. Now what I want to do is basically do a block out of the main areas. So for my body, for example, I'm going to be using a metal essentially, and I'm going to tone it down and put some kind of variation flex in it. So we just need to pick a metal, really, pick the one we want. Let's try a gold pure. So under the layers, I'll delete that paint layer there, drag and drop that in, and eventually, there we go, we get our metal in there. And that's quite, you know, in terms of its reflectance, in terms of, you know, how it's reflecting the world, that's quite nice. So I think I'll stick with that, but I don't want it to be gold. I want it to be perhaps a black colour or a darker colour. As you know, you've probably heard me say many times before, I'd never go to absolute black because it's not a PBR safe material, a colour rather. You know, it will come up and it will tell you that, you know, it's not going to look quite right. So get close to black and that should do the job. There we go. So I'm going to replicate that for the head. So let's just call it main colour and right click and copy layer, and then I'll bring this down and go find the helmet area and I'll paste that in there as well. There we go. So as I said, I'm just blocking out at the moment. As I go through, I'll continually refine and refine and refine to, you know, get to our final point. So we have an arm. So this I'm going to want some metal in as well. I'm going to start out with a plain metal, and then I'm going to add some texture and some, you know, direction and roughness to it. So for this one, I think we'll go platinum. So let's get rid of this and pop that in there and wait for it to catch up. Oh, it's not going to catch up because I've got no layer. Stupid man. There we go. Drag and drop that in there. Okay, where are we next? So that's arm, body, helmet. We've got a miscellaneous one. Now the miscellaneous, I've put a few different things on here, and if I go to the 2D view, you'll see that. Let's press F to focus. So I've got my pipes at the back, I've got my wheel hubs and a few other bits and bobs in here. We're going to mask these out eventually, but at the moment, as I said, I'm just blocking out. So let's pop that back to 3D. And for this one, I want a rougher metal. So let's use iron powdered for the moment, and that should fill those in. There we go. Doesn't matter if it's going to be the final material you're going to use, you're just getting a feel for, you know, all of the colours and things you're going to use. So the pistons, which, I mean, they're not pistons, they're pistons and axles and basically things that connect things to other things. We can pop a silver on there, so let's delete that out, and actually titanium might be nicer. There we go. So what have we got left? I believe it's just the tyres, so let's have a look at that. So for these tyres, oh, there's the visor as well. We're going to eventually make like a rubberish material on this, but to start that out, I'm going to put a plastic mat in there, and then I'm going to take that down to sort of a darkish grey to get it going. And the last thing is the visor, which I'm just going to put something probably entirely inappropriate on, or not. It's having a think. Well, let's go plastic PVC, drag and drop that in there and get rid of that. Okay, so that's the basics of him. You know, and what we're going to do in the next few things is go through and revise each of these materials, use some, you know, blending and filtering, and use some generators to start to get it to look a little bit more interesting and real. And we'll start with the tyres, because I think that's possibly one of the more interesting bits of this model. Okay, so I shall talk to you then. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is have a look at the tyres. So the tyres, I want to put some variation, I want to put some tread on and maybe some detail. So we'll start off with some variation. So I'm going to duplicate my base layer here, and then I'm just going to change its properties ever so slightly. I'll make it slightly darker, and then we'll also increase the roughness. and then we'll pop a black mask on this with a fill layer below. And now over in our textures area, I need to find kind of a rough dirt kind of colour to, or a dirt kind of map to use there. So where am I? Where are my dirt maps? There they are. Dirt map 4 I've found is useful here, so I'll just pop that over, and now we've got some variation across our tyres. So if I go down to the noise parameters, I can increase the scale of this so that it's a little bit finer, and I can change my disorder to get another different kind of look. But if you'll notice here, what I'm getting is a little seam, and that's, you know, the UV seam, of course. So let's just pop up here and change this from a UV projection to a triplanar to eliminate that seam. There we go. Okay, so I also want to put in a tyre track on this, some sort of pattern to, you know, raise in chunks. So we're going to need a new layer for this, but for this layer we're only really going to want the height map. There we go, so just height. So and I've UV'd this knowing that this is what I want to do, because you know, laying a pattern across this is going to be difficult if my UV isn't straight. So you'll notice that my UVs here, all these little straight bits, they're the tyres, they're the tyre treads. So I can confidently put a flat pattern on those and it will work quite nicely. So let's have a look. We've got all sorts of flat patterns down here. We've got this fabric one which I can drag and drop in. Of course it's not masks, so let's mask it. So it's a black mask with a we use the polygon fill and UV chunk fill, and I'm going to switch this over to mask because I just like the confirmation that it's actually working. There we go, and then pop that back, and now it's just on the tyres. It's the wrong way on the tyres, but we can sort that out. So if I go to my proper layer, and if I rotate this 90 degrees and perhaps change the scale a little bit, let's have a look, see what we've got down here. We've got a tile option, there we go, and that works quite nicely. There we go. So you could use almost any of these patterns and they would all, you know, do something nice. So I found that this fabric pattern here is quite good for it. Again, you need to increase the tiling to get it where you want it, and this one you can take the border intensity down so that you get these kind of unbroken blocks instead of all these little individual blocks, or whatever you want, you know, to your taste, of course. Or you could go really kind of crazy and abstract and have fish scales. Let's pop those in there, and oops, increase the tiling. Yeah, anything you like really, anything that looks good to you. I'm going to stick with my V pattern wherever that's gone. Of course I've lost it now because I wasn't paying attention. There it is. There we go. So we'll increase the tile on that. That works quite nicely. We don't have any position parameters here, but that's okay. I think that's fine. Let's try inverting it, see what that does. No, just moves it a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now I've got some kind of treaded tyres with some variation. In the next bit, I'm just going to put a little bit of detail, like a ring around the tyre walls. So I will talk to you then. Okay, so for the tyre walls, I need to do a bit of masking kind of how can I put it, calculations. I need to stack, you know, different things, but I found the easiest way to do this is to actually create a folder. So if I create this folder, and I'll call it ring, and if I put a black mask on this folder with my polygon fill tool, I only want this, you know, texture to appear on these tile walls. So if I switch to the mask view, there we go, just click on these to make sure I've got them selected, and then pop that backwards a bit. Now anything I put under here will only appear on the tile wall. I don't have to double mask, I don't have to guess, this is where it's going. So let's drag a material over there, and I'm going to use plastic matte to start with. There we go. And then on this plastic matte I'm going to add a black mask, and then I'm going to add a generator, and for that generator I'm going to use our old friend UV borders. So that already puts, you know, a little ring on there, but we can adjust it. I can increase the balance to make it sharper, I can reduce the distance to make it a bit thinner, and if I wanted to I could smooth it out a bit, but I don't, and to make it really sharp I can up the contrast. So there we have a little blue ring around each of our tyres. So, you know, it might have seemed, well, why didn't I just put these two masks together and multiply it out? Well, you know, I did that, and I did it a few times, and basically I found it difficult to recreate. You know, it was finding the right layer blend, making sure I had the right things masked. This is just a quicker way of doing it. It's not, you know, it just works without me messing about too much. What I would like to do is paint out these inners, because I don't want this on the inner ring. So if I add a paint layer to that mask and set my colour to black, I can start to paint around here to do that. So let me go to paint mode. Let's make sure that's black still. No, it's not. There we go. Now I can paint that out so that I don't have that on the inner part. I mean, if you want it on the inner part, you don't have to do this bit, of course, but I definitely don't. There we go. This might take me a moment. Sorry, it's a boring bit. One thing here that might help me is if I change this from tangent warp to a UV paint. It has a tendency to be more accurate and slip less. Previously, if I started off the map, for example, it wouldn't really know what to do, so it kind of failed. But now with the UV option, I can just paint around there, and you know, it paints wherever I tell it to. Even if it's inexpertly, apparently. There we go. Nearly done. There. Okay, so that's got some blue rings. You might decide to take it off the insides as well. Again, just, you know, use your mask here, or use your paint layer to paint that out. The last thing I want to do is turn this into an interesting, or more interesting, racy style colour. So I'm going to go for a kind of yellow, but nearly orange, or verging towards orange. There we go. Now I'm going to want to use this colour elsewhere, and rather than having to pick it several times, I'm just going to add it to my swatches so that I can use it, you know, time and time again. Okay, so that's the rings on the tyre done. What will we do next? Well, I think I'll make the body and the helmet look a bit more like a flecked car paint. Yes, we'll do that next. So I shall talk to you then. Okay, so in between videos I've noticed that I've got an issue with my tyre tread. You'll notice that these arrows are pointing up and these arrows are pointing down. They should both be pointing in the same way, and I've also noticed I've got some horrible seams here which I don't really want to have. So what I'm going to do is going to launch the program I made it in, which is Modo. I'm going to adjust the model to put it right. I'm not going to make you do it. I'll upload the version that is correct, but you should be able to see from this, you know, what I'm up to. Okay, so here he is, and what I want is to go to my UV room, and oops, let's minimize that, go to my texture, and I just want to select my tyre material. So let's find that. So under my polygons list, so material, and where are we? Arms, body, tyre. If I hit the plus there, it will select just the tyres, and go Shift H to hide everything else. Now the problem is that these pieces are in two, and I only want them to be in one. So let me select that, and if I press A, it will focus. So what I can do here is select this edge here, and then I can use the move and sew tool to bring that here to, you know, join them up essentially. And I'll do the same on the other side, so it'll be somewhere around there. Oh, it's this one here, so select around the end, and then I'll use my move and sew tool to do that. Now the other one is this island here, which is actually looks like it's pointing in the right direction. Modo is telling me, because it does, that it's not reversed, it's fine. If I go to errors, for example, and select flipped, it's not going to select anything because it's reporting it correctly. But for texturing purposes, actually I want it the other way. So if I just select the island and rotate this 180 degrees, that should do the job for me. Okay, so I need to repack, of course. So let's find the pack button, let's select nothing first, take orient off, and repack. There we go. Okay, so now I need to re-export this whole thing, so I'm just going to unhide everything first, and then I'll right click, export selected, just as a wavefront OBJ, and OK, and I'll overwrite my original. Now you might think this is a disaster because, you know, Substance Painter, we're already started, we're going to have to start again, but we don't, and this is why I'm showing it to you. What we can do in Substance is go to Edit and Project Configuration and select our model again, preserve stroke positions because we have done some painting, and click OK, and magically it comes back and everything's right now. The only thing that's slightly wrong is my front tyres, because it hasn't picked up, well, I mean previously there were two islands, now they're one island. It's not quite sure what it's doing, so let's have a look at that. So on the tyre layer, for my treads, see the mask is not quite right anymore, so we will go to our mask layer. It's tried to guess which is the correct one. Go to my fill, take that back, take that one off, and then whoops, pop these two on, and that should have got us more or less back to the right spot. So we're nearly there. We just need to do a bit of adjusting, and one of those major adjustments is the mesh maps. So we need to rebake our maps. So I'll select all, set the ID, and bake, and this will then recalculate all of our mesh maps So it's right because we've moved one of the UV positions, you know, so it's now not calculating correctly. It doesn't know, you know, it thinks things are in different places, so you get artifacts and strange things all over the place. But it's a really handy feature of Substance that, you know, even though you might be halfway through a project, you might be nearly finished, you know, but you can still do that. You can still go and change your model outside of Modo, outside of Substance, and then bring it back in, and you won't have lost too much of your work. And if I click OK on that one, the only thing I'm now dissatisfied about is these little treads down here. They're not quite right. So in the next video, what I might do is just adjust those on another layer to make them smaller and line them up a little bit better. Or I might give them a completely different tread. You never know. Okay. Oh, I've lost my rings as well. I'll have to do that too. Oh well, I haven't lost too much. Okay, so where is the rings? Let's do that now. There we go. This should be straightforward. It's just a question of updating this mask. So let's go to a mask view, and that one, whoops, that one, and that one. And then when I go back to my material view, that should be somewhat right. It's not looking completely right because my paint mask has screwed me a little bit. If I hide that, you'll see. There we go. So between videos, I'll just you know, repaint that mask just to get us back to where we were. So yeah, there is some work to be done, but not too much, and it is possible to kind of recover a project even if your UV is messed up. And believe me, in my years as a modeler, texturer kind of person, there's many times I've got to the end of a texturing project and found out that one of my UVs is wrong, and I've got to start again. Substance kind of helps fix that a little bit. Okay, so yes, I'll fix a couple of bits between, then I'll come back and we'll do the treads on the front, and then we'll move on. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so now I'm going to switch out the treads on the front. So first of all, we're going to select the mask on our tread here and set our colour to black and remove those two front tyres. And then we'll duplicate this and start again. So duplicate layer. Now I want to remove the back ones off this. Come on, mask. There we go. And then put the front ones on. So I'll switch up to white. Now these front ones, I'm just going to have like a radial. So it, yeah, it makes sense to be in my head, honestly, but I won't try and explain it. So what I want is a stripe going around the tyre, your multiple stripes. For that, what I'm going to need is something new. So I've switched to my height channel here so I can see what's going on, and over here, where is it? I have a gradient. Here we go. So I'm going to switch this out, so turn that off for this gradient, which is just a line basically, you know, across the page, but we've got this rotated, so I'll put that back to 0, and as you can see, it's having no effect whatsoever, or certainly not the desired effect. So what I need to do is tile it. So we can just tile it like so. Let's make it 90, and now we get our multiple rings going around our tyre, which is exactly what we wanted. So let's go back to our material view, and there we go. Now I've got nice front tyres, I've got nice back tyres, everything's going in the right direction and everyone's happy. Well, I'm happy. Okay, so yeah, that's the tyres done after a bit of shenanigans. What we'll do next is we'll go onto the body and the helmet to, you know, make more of a car painty kind of effect. So I shall talk to you then. Okay, so we're going to put some kind of variation into this metally kind of texture we have up here. So we'll start with the helmet. So it's on main colour in a minute, switch that back to base, and we're going to duplicate this. Where's duplicate? There it is. And then we'll just change the properties ever so slightly. So I'm going to just lighten up the grey, teeny tiny bit, not too much. And I'm also going to adjust the roughness. So I could either go up or down. I think I might go up, depending upon your point of view. And now we just need to mix these together. So it's right click, add black mask, right click, I'm going to add a fill. And I want to put kind of a grainy, sort of broken noise into this. So I don't know why I'm scrolling, I just need to type noise in my search there. And we can pick one out. So I want something really, really fine. I don't want anything with any real detail in it. So let's, whoops, drag that up and see what we can find. Black and white spots I think is probably going to be our best bit. I want a fairly regular one, nothing too, you know, patterned, and I'll drag and drop that into my grayscale. Now if we go to our mask, I can adjust it to fit. So first of all I need that to be triplanar to get rid of the seams, and then on our noise parameters I'm going to change the scale. I want it to be really, 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 really kind of small, and also want to sort of change it up a bit so that we have what am I trying to say, some you know, real delineation between the black and the white. So, a lot of contrast. This isn't really doing it for me because it's too patchy. So let's have a look at this crystal 1. That looks like it might be a bit more like it. So again I'll adjust the balance, maybe the contrast, increase my scale a lot, maybe the disorder. I just want, you know, there to be quite a harsh mix between, you know, the two of our two materials here. So let's switch that back, and now we do, but it's not really the right texture still. Let's try cells 4. Okay, I think this is going to work out. Let's turn our scale right up. Can I overblow this scale? No, 256 seems like it might be a limit. No, I can overblow it. There we go. That's much more like it. And let's make this bit a little bit wider and see what I can see. So yes, I can further increase the scale, and now I'm getting more of a regular kind of broken pattern, which is exactly what I want. Now we don't necessarily want it to be very grainy. Sorry, grainy is not the word. Very contrasty, but I'm just going to adjust a few parameters here until I get to a kind of a look that I'm happy with. There we go. Bear in mind I'm never going to see it that close up. You know, from this distance it looks quite nice, but from that close not so much. So I'll copy this layer, and then for the body we'll add that back in, paste that there, and now that should be on both. There we go, that's much nicer. Let's select that to get rid of the grayscale. Much better. Again, you can play with your patterns, you can, you know, do what you want, you can, you know, even devise your very own pattern in, you know, Substance Designer, but you know, we can get a pretty good effect, you know, just by mixing two things that are quite close together, but breaking it up with a mask. Okay, so what shall we do next? I think the arm pieces, I think that's our last kind of big kind of region. Yeah, so we'll have a go at that. We're going to put some kind of brush and, you know, marks to, you know, give it a little bit of direction, and then we'll see where we go from there. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so let's put some kind of direction into these arms. So I've got my platinum pure, and what I want to do is duplicate that. So let's right click duplicate, and I'm going to add a black mask to it, and to that we'll add another fill layer. So once again I want to change this colour, and I'm going to make it a little darker, again just a little darker, and to further emphasize the difference I'm also going to increase the roughness, but not very much. So in our black mask we'll add a fill layer, and this time I want some sort of directional noise, and we have this anisotropic which is quite nice for this. I'll drag and drop that in there, and you'll see now we're getting kind of waves or streaks down the arm, which I believe we would have in this if they were across the arm. I think it would look like it would bend too easily. Makes sense in my head. I hope it makes sense in yours. So that's given that a little bit more detail, but we also want to kind of rough up some ends, so let's add a new layer in again. This time I'm just going to do a blank layer with a black mask and a generator, and we'll use our ambient occlusion here. So our ambient occlusion kind of is all a bit reversed to the way I want it, at least. So I'm going to do a global invert, and then we can see that there's some occlusion down there. We've got some a little bit of occlusion up the top, and now we can change our material properties to kind of exploit that. So I can darken it up. I'll never get used to that being there. Now I can increase the roughness, and whoops, what else? Don't want the height, don't want normal, opacity or emission. Metal I'll leave alone. So we've got colour and roughness there. So if I look at the mask here, you might say that it's all a bit subtle, but it doesn't have to be. You know, we can enhance it. So at the top, if I add, for example, a levels mask, then I can change the way this is doing it. So if I take the white down here, see, I'll get less white. If I take the black up, you'll see it becomes, you know, a bit more white all over. I can adjust the grey level at the top on the input, and that's doing a nice job for me. It's kind of enhancing that map and increasing the areas that our thing is going to go in, and I can crush white down and it will increase it even more. So just adjust until you're happy with what you're looking at, and we'll go back to material, and we're starting to get a little bit of variation across the whole there. So if I take that back, you'll see virtually nothing. If I drag that down, it's going to become more and more intense. There we go. Okay, so I mean that's kind of the major bits done. We do have a few things that I want to update and change, and some detail I would like to add in terms of painting. Yeah, but before I do that, I'm going to divvy up the miscellaneous area I've got. Let's isolate that so that I can put different materials on these areas. Okay, so we'll do that next. Okay, so let me split my screen 2D and 3D. Now I can see everything laid out, and I want to create in here, let's just delete that first, a couple of folders. So 1, 2, 3, that should do the trick. We'll have the pipe, the exhaust pipes, whoops, we've got the hubs, and I also have a cable area. I might add another one to this yet, We'll see in a moment. Okay, there we go. Okay, so if I add a mask to each of these, so a black mask, and black mask, I can switch to my mask channel so I can see what I'm doing, and I can start adding things in. So let's make sure that's on white. It is. So I'm going to select over my pipes there, try and get all of those using the 3D view, because you know they have a devil of a job trying to pick it out from the 2D view. Let's have a good look around, make sure I haven't missed anything. There we go. So that's our pipes and the hubs. Now there we go. That's those two there, and the front. Couple of bits there, front inner. Right, I think that's nearly there. I do want this inner bit here, and I want that there, and also this bit at the end of these pipes. Doesn't have to be perfect straight off, obviously, you know, you can come in and refine these, but I'm just trying to get it right. There we go. So I think I've got all of my hub pieces. Oh, I haven't got this bit over here. Famous last words. There we go. Shall I do these inners? Yes, I will make those inners. The bit I was umming and ahhing about earlier was these pieces that attach to the body. They look a bit weird as being metal. I'm going to change those. So we'll add another new folder here, and we'll call this body, and a black mask. And now I'm going to change to the mask view again and add these bits. Whoops, not that bit, that bit. There we go, and that bit. Yeah, that should do the job. Right, so cables. So the cables are just these bits at the front. Switch back to the mask view. There we go, that bit and that bit. Right. Now we've divided it up, we can start texturing. And the easiest thing for this one is actually on this body here. I'm just going to use whatever I've got on the body here. So if I select these two layers and copy them, go back to my miscellaneous area, select the body and paste them in. When I go back to my material view, I should see that that's done just that. It's perfect. Okay, so we're going to sort of go through these a bit at a time. We'll do each section as a material. So next we'll come in and I think we'll do, I don't know, perhaps the exhaust pipes. So I shall talk to you then. Okay, so I'm on my pipes layer and I've switched to the mask view because I've realised that for the same reason I don't want these on the metal, I don't want these on metal either, because they attach to the body, and you know, if I get something very metal attaching to the body in a really straight kind of way, it's going to be a bit jarring. So I'm going to remove these. So my property is set to black. I'm just going to just slide over these ones until I've got all of those selected. That's the faces. Now just those little bits there, and the other side there, much nicer. Now unfortunately I have to go onto the body texture and add them back in again. There we go. So now I need it to be white, and now I can add those back in. probably an angle here where I can do it all at once. There we go. Okay, let's switch back to our material view. That's nicer, and I'll go out of the isolation mode to have a general look around. There we go, looks nice. Okay, so let's have a go with the pipes here. So I need a base metal, and this is going to be kind of more industrial, if you like. We want something that's got a bit of grain and a bit of something to it. So let's try steel. What have we got? Steel rough, steel rust, steel paint. Well, let's try rough. So I'll drag and drop that onto that folder, and there we go. So let's go and have a look, make sure everything looks kind of right. I've got some seams, which I'd kind of expect. So I'll put this to a triplanar view. There we go. I think my scale might be a little low, so let's pop that up to about 4. There. Okay, so I don't want these to be particularly plain. They are particularly plain currently. So I want to put some kind of carbonisation on it, you know, where there's been some fumes coming out and it's kind of scored the metal a little. So we'll do that with another layer. So let's pop in a fill layer, and this layer we need a black mask, and this time I'm just going to use a paint mask because I'm going to paint where I want it to carbonise essentially. So I've just gone to the isolation view again, just to keep the body and everything out of the way, make life a bit easier for me, and we'll change this material a little bit for the moment down to a darkish grey, and we're going to increase the roughness a lot, but everything else I want off. There we go. So now basically down the pipes, I've got this kind of end blanking it off. I want to fill that in. So with my brush, just going to size that down a bit and start to paint in. Let's go to our mask view. I suspect I'm on the wrong colour at the moment. I am. There we go. Let's go back again. That was just to check that the mask was, not painting, as it were. So I'm just going to paint around these interiors. I shan't show you all of these because we'd be here ages, and nobody wants that. Now you remember earlier we changed our kind of brush angle to, or our alignment to UV. We want it back to tangent now. There we go. So I'm just going to carbon up the inside of these. In fact, these interiors are probably, how can I put it, on an island of their own. So just for quickness sake, I'm going to add those in there because I want the whole of the inside essentially to be carbonised. And now I'm going to kind of paint over the edges. So back to my paint tool. Now I can start to rough up these ends a little bit, and I'm just kind of painting in as a block at the moment. Oops, I've painted through the mesh there. Let me see. Yeah, that's there. There we go. Try and get an angle where I don't do that. I've made my life difficult here by having them so close together, but that's how it should be, really. Not that I'm making my life difficult, but I make a lot of compromises on models to try and make them look good, but some you really don't want to. There we go. Let's take that down to black, and I'll just paint that little bit of overspin out. Now for these other bits, I want to change the way I'm painting a little bit. So let's take that back up again, and I think we'll go for a different brush. Let's go to the brush and take our filter off, and I want some sort of dirt. There we go. Just to give it a more kind of organic, ragged kind of edge. I think I've missed a bit around there, don't you? Yep, there it is. Let's take my brush down a bit. Just fill that in. Okay, so you can, go at that for as long as you like. I'm going to keep it relatively brief, but I do want to do the same down at this end, just to add in a little extra kind of blending between those material zones. Plus, I'm pretty sure that you do get this kind of carbonisation and sort of heating patterns on exhaust pipes, even though this is a really kind of fancy one, as it were. There we go. Okay, so between videos I will continue that and finish it off, and I should end up with several of these, all looking slightly different. Well, 6 of them anyway. I will talk to you in the next section. Okay, so I've painted in the rest of my masks, and I've just unhinned everything, and I'm thinking it's all a bit much, really. So I'm going to adjust my base material on this. Going to take the colour a little bit paler, and I'm going to take my roughness down. Now, if I take it all the way down, it's going to be very, very shiny, of course. I want to take it up just until it's a little bit more rougher, or a little less shinier than the actual underlying metal material. There we go, something like that. We can add to this with another layer. So let me right click and add a fill to this, and then in my textures, let's just get rid of that. I want something, something a bit blotchy, so let's try spots. That's good, and I'm just going to drag and drop that into my colour. Sorry, my brain just went completely off the rails because I've added that in the wrong place. I want to add it to the mask, so I'll add a fill layer and drag and drop, and that's going to completely override our painted one. So I'm going to take the painted over the top of it, and then just going to take the opacity down on it a little bit, and now I should get both. And if I come to these grunge spots layer, we can see they're quite prominent. I'm going to switch it to triplanar to get rid of the seam issues, and I'm going to increase the scale so I get a bit more frequency and a bit smaller spots. There we go. So it's a bit of extra kind of roughness to that. Okay, so what else do we want to do? Well, we want to put our hubs and pipes in, although it's not pipes, it's the cables area, and I basically want to copy my rubber. So I'm just going to nip down to Tyres and take the bottom 2 layers. So Tyres, bottom 2 layers, I'll select both those two with shift held down, copy my layers, back to my misc area, open up cables and paste that in there. Let's paste. There it is. So that should have gone on there quite nicely. Good, lovely. And for our hubs, where are they? Of course they're in here as well. Let's close these up so that I don't get too confused. So under our hubs we've got a mask, but we don't have any sort of colours or anything. So let's pop in a metal on these ones. So let's just type in metal and pop back to materials, and I want iron raw, and I'll drop that on top of that folder. There we go. I need to adjust this a bit. Our roughness is perhaps a little high or low, not sure. And I want to turn the height off because I don't want that height on there. Come on, turn off. There we go. Do we have normal as well? Yes, that's what's doing that. Okay. But I do want to put some height on these to give it a little bit of extra, to give it a little bit of something. And for that I'm going to need a new layer. This is going to be height only. And I want to put height around this little rim piece here. So let's pop in a black mask and go to our mask view, so I'm picking the right bits. Not height, got height on the brain now. There we go. So I want those two bits, and these two, and similarly on the back wheels I want that bit and that bit. And when we go back to our material now, I can select the material and I can increase the height. It's not really showing up currently. I'm not entirely sure what's going on with that. Probably because I haven't set it in the shader. So let's increase our tessellation and up our scale. And yeah, you see it's kind of detaching, which is a little bit annoying. Well, it's a lot annoying because that means I'm going to have to do it in a slightly different way. Excuse me. Let's take that value right down. There we go. So as and when we export this, this is currently splitting the the mesh apart, which is not really helpful. We could kind of do it a different way, but we need to displace it both directions. So we need to displace it on the tyre as well as here, and that just would kind of spoil the effect. So I'm having a think now. So let me have a think between videos. Might take me some thought, and I will come back and we'll see what I can come up with. So I shall talk to you then. Okay, so I have a cunning plan which may or may not fail. So what I'm going to do is delete this layer that I popped in there earlier, and I'm going to add a folder instead. And I'm going to restrict whatever I do to the same areas. So we'll add a black mask, and then on that black mask we're going to add in those rims. And I'm just going to select one for the moment, just for speed. So select those two there. Okay, so what I want is basically for this to displace, but not at an edge, not at a seam. I want it to displace essentially down the middle. So let's have a look, see how we can do that. So in here we can add our fill layer, and we'll leave colour on just for the moment. And oops, let's go to material. There we go. And on this layer I want to add a generator, and for this one I'm going to use the UV borders. I'm actually going to switch to our mask layer now. Whoops. Oh my goodness, what's going on? Didn't add the black mask. Add the black mask, add the generator, and this one I want to be the UV borders. Then we'll switch to the mask view, and see what we can do. So if I take the contrast right up, we'll get that nice and sharp. If I start to bring the balance down, we'll start to get a border. Now we're only really interested in this little rim here. Everything else is masked out. So the only problem with that is this little kink here, which sometimes you get actually, you know, as you kind of crank a circle together, but we can actually just paint it out. So if I right click here and add a paint layer, set my paint to black and get real close. Oops, I was on the wrong tool. Set my paint to black. I'm going to need to switch my brush back to a standard brush. Where are we? Where's the basic card? There. Shrink my brush down with control and right mouse. I can just paint that out there. Okay, now in theory this mask here at the top of this will only put it onto this white area. So if I go back to this layer, go back to my material, and I can increase height to give it some interest. It's going the wrong way at the moment, so I'll just take that a little bit away on the other direction, and now we have a little kind of detail on there. I can see I haven't painted out a bit, so let's do that. So just whoops, let's try and paint that through so it comes out nicely. And there we've got a little rim around there, which is doing some good. Now one of the issues here, of course, well not of course, is that, you know, my UV island is very small, so it's a little bit difficult to get a really fine piece there. What I'm going to do though is add a filter here and just see if I can soften it up with a blur. So that's, yeah, it's still a bit rough, but yeah, it's not quite so jarring. I just wanted to get something in there that just kind of married those two together without actually kind of just having a flat plane. You know, I could have added it in the modelling stage, or we can add it in texturing. In this case, I think I'd probably have done it in the modelling stage because, you know, my UV is so tiny that I can't really do anything more than that with that. So what's going on with my tyre here? I see I've got a little bit of yellow coming through on one of my layers. So let's have a look at this mask. I'm not entirely sure where that's coming from. Ah, there it is, look. So let's get my paint out. Make my brush a bit bigger this time and just paint out the rest of this that I cunningly missed earlier. There we go. Oh my goodness. If only I was a bit more diligent in the first place, eh? There we go, that's a bit nicer. Okay, so apart from doing that on the other side of the wheel, which I'll do between videos, I think we're moderately done. I'm going to put some kind of normal stamps and textures and maybe a design on the body to make it a bit more interesting. But apart from that, yeah, the basics are done. So I'm going to do that between videos, and then we'll come back and perhaps look at the visor. Okay, so I'll talk to you then. Okay, so let's put a few details on this. Oops, press the wrong button there. Let's put that back. What I want to do is isolate the body here, because it's going to make me painting much easier. So let's isolate that, and I just want to put a few kind of details on this to make it slightly more interesting. I'm going to put symmetry on. I'm going to try and put symmetry on, but before we do that I'm going to add a paint layer, because I'm going to need a paint layer to put symmetry on. There we go, now I've got symmetry down the middle. So now when I paint this side, it's going to paint the other side, and we want this layer just to be normal, or normals rather. And on a paintbrush I'm going to use the basic hard, there we go, and then we're going to pop in a normal. Okay, so if I go to my textures library and just type in normal, I'll get a whole bunch of normal brushes essentially, or tips, and we want to pop that into our normal channel down here. So we've got some kind of hex screws and all sorts of bits and bobs down here, which we can use, and we've got some vents, all sorts of bits and bobs. So let's grab one of these. Let's try this one. So I'm going to drag and drop that onto my normal, and now wherever I paint I'm going to stamp that normal onto there. There we go. Try and get that a tiny bit more central perhaps. There we go. So anything you are going to do kind of symmetrically, you know, do that now. I'm going to put some of those there. This is making it look a bit oversized toy now, isn't it? There we go. I'm just going to unisolate for a second. Have a look around there just to make sure. Yep, no, I haven't intercepted with that. That's good. There we go. Yeah, so once you've done all your symmetrical ones, you can turn that off. Now I'm going to put some in that are a little bit more, how can I put it, off, shall we say. So this vent thing here, whoops, I need to drag and drop that onto my normals there. I want that down the back essentially, but it's cutting it off, you see, as I'm pasting it's cutting it down, so I just need to adjust my sizing a little bit. Let's find that. If I just close these down too hard. Advanced blending, stamps, tiling, no tiling, attributes. No, I'm just having a mad moment. I haven't gone up far enough, that's why. So if I take my size down, it's going to make no difference at all. So what I actually want to do, sorry for all the faffing, is take my alpha off. And now when I paste it, it's going to paste without an alpha. So I'm going to take isolation off again, because what I want to do is put a couple of these down the back here, but I don't want to interfere with these the pipes. I want them to be, separate. And for a bit of variation, I'm going to put a slightly different vent over here. So if I just rotate that around a bit, there we go. So I've got left control held down and my left mouse button to rotate. I'll pop that in there. I won't pop that in there because I haven't put it in the right place. I keep having to change this. I keep thinking I can just click on it, but that's not the case. So there we go. We'll have a little vent in there. So I want that in that direction, I think. Perhaps a bit further forward. Rotate it back again. I could be here all day doing this. There we go. And perhaps a circular one over here, which I won't have to rotate too much. There we go. I know. I'll drag and drop it into the place where I should drag and drop it, shall I? There we go. and I want something on the front, and I'm going to use this circular vent here off to one side. Oops, let's make that smaller. And again, I've forgotten to put it in the right place. Come on, John. There we go. Perhaps put something down here. Perhaps another circular vent. Yeah, just go through it, add what you want, basically. There's all sorts of brushes you can use. I've got some buttons here. Let's pop one of those on the side of the helmet. I'm going to mirror this and select the right material. Add another new layer. Same again, just my normals. Drag my desired thing in there. Oh God, I'm having such a moment. It should be a fill layer. There we go. Not a fill layer, a paint layer. There we go. That looks quite nice. And maybe one last something on the front of his face. On the front of this kind of muzzle bit here. Need to turn off the symmetry for that. I've done it again. Every time. Nope, that's not a nice one anyway. Let's try this one. There we go. I've actually done it right this time. Just need to rotate that round so it's horizontal. There we go. Okay, so detail yours up as you want, you know, just go for it. And when you're finished, we're going to add a little bit of design, a little bit of a counter colour on the body and the helmet to break up the very darkness of it. So I will talk to you in the next. Okay, so let's have a look at this. I want to put kind of a couple of stripes down the body here, and so I'm on the body material. I'm going to put it into an isolation mode, and I'm going to add a new layer, and then we'll pop a black mask on it and a fill layer. So this fill layer, we want a stripe straight down, so let's pop the gradient linear in and set it to UV projection. Not UV projection, triplanar projection. Okay, so now if I change my scale a little bit, we should get a single line. Well, we'll get lots of lines, but what I actually want is to turn the tiling off. Actually, I don't want any tiling at all. Sorry, my brain. It's obviously the further I go into this, the more my brain starts to shut down. So let's set that to 90 degrees, and then we can adjust the contrast. Sorry, the balance and the contrast. So balance down, contrast up, and I get a nice line. And I can use this gizmo just to offset that. So I'm a little bit limited by my model, so I'm going to just go to the edge there, and then on the main material I'm going to use my plastic matte and then change the colour. I'm going to use the colour we selected earlier, or that we used earlier for the ring around the tyres. So that's that bit. However, I just want to move this over a little bit. There we go. Okay, so actually I want two stripes, and for that I'm going to duplicate this layer. So duplicate effect, and if I move it, it will just look like nothing's happening. What I need to do is change that to a linear dodge add, and now I'll get those two stripes, and I can move them close together, further apart, depending upon what I want. Okay, so we need to repeat that for the helmet. So let's copy those effects, select the helmet, and then paste those in and see what's happening. Can't see anything currently. Just can't paste them in, can I? Stupid man. I need to copy the whole layer. Sorry. Copy layer, back to the helmet, and then paste that layer in. I tried to paste the mask, not the things, and the mask, it just wasn't going to work. Paste. There we go. So now I get the same for the helmet, and I could either leave them there or I could offset them again. I think it probably might be interesting if I offset them a little bit. So, whoops, wrong one. Select the bottom one, just move that over, and then the other one I'll move it over and closer, perhaps to the other side. So with this method I'm a little bit limited, but it should do the job. Now part of the problem here is that these side bits are getting in on the action, and I don't want them to, so I'm going to need to paint those out. So we'll add a paint layer on top of that. We'll set our colour to black. Let's make our brush a little bit bigger, and I'm going to paint those out. Do a better job than I did earlier this time. There we go. Nearly there. And I could just, just to tidy things up, do a little job of painting it back in here where the projection isn't quite working right. Okay, let's go back to the full view, and that's what he looks like now. A little bit more interesting. Perhaps I'll take a bit of that out. Where's my where's my colour gone? Brush. Oh, I've gone to a different tool, that's why I can't see colour. Sorry. Once again, I'm letting you down. So let's take that right down. Just going to try and tidy these up. There's an interesting tool here actually called Lazy Stroke. If you click on this here, the lazy mouse, you can get a bit of a finer or a slower stroke, which smooths it out. You'll see it's got the kind of greyish box around the outside of the brush size. It uses that to kind of average out your movement. You'll see that while you're stroking, it doesn't actually change. It only changes after the lazy brush has passed that area. So if I do it down here, just filling in that little piece. There we go. Okay. One last thing to do, and that's to just integrate our normal stamps into the mesh or into the texture. And I'll just do a quick bit here. So I'm going to add an anchor point to our normals layer, and then above here I'm going to add some effects to just tie them in a little bit more, and then we'll be done. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so let's pop a layer over the top of this, pop a fill layer in, and I've already done it. So we've got our anchor point there. So we will add a black mask and generator. I'm going to use the dirt generator, but I'm going to turn down the grunge amount so I don't get the grunge coming out from too many spots. There we go, something like that. So we want our normal data in this, so we'll go to our micro normal and anchor points, select the anchor point, switch the reference channel over to normal, and then up here we'll enable our micro normal details, and as you can see it's added in that extra detail to our mask, which is very handy. So we can adjust it a little bit, so for example the curvature intensity, the height details, the ambient occlusion, which is what because our dirt generator is generally just using the ambient here to generate itself, the AO radius is working rather than the all the other ones which aren't included in this mask or in this generator, and we can update the AO depth. So I'm going to turn the depth down a little bit and the radius down a little bit. I want sort of a little bit of finer details on that, and then we can adjust our main layer. So I'm going to take colour and all these off except rough, and I'm going to turn the roughness up. And now it might be very subtle, but there is a difference. If I turn this layer off and on, you should see what's happening. So it's darkening up and taking some of the shine off of our top material there, which is perfect. So this layer I can copy, and we'll go down to the body layer and paste that in. Where's paste? It's here somewhere. There we go. Now the problem here is that our anchor point doesn't exist here, so we're going to have to add it in. So right click, add anchor point, and then on our generator we need to re-reference it. So we'll go back to our anchor points. This one is still layer 1, but it's on this, in this material, not the previous one. And if I now turn that off and on, you'll see exactly what's going on. I'm going to have a look at the mask here because I think it might be a little too much. I might need to turn our levels down a little bit. So I'm going to take the grunge amount right down, and the scale, let's take that off, and under the micro details we'll turn that up and down as well. Actually I haven't referenced the channel, which doesn't help me, so let's go and pop that on, and there we go. Now we've got a few details in there. I'm getting a bit of extra kind of wear and tear, which I'm not unhappy about, so I'm going to leave that on there. If you wanted to, of course, you can go in and paint that out by adding a paint layer above this and painting out that detail. So let's go back to our material view. There we go, and there we have it. Now I thought I was finished, but I'm clearly not, because I haven't done the visor yet. I know I said I was going to do it earlier, and then I got distracted by probably something shiny under my chair. So I'll come back and do the visor in the next section. Right, so the visor then. So I'm on this visor material here, and I've given it its own material because I wanted a lot of space. I wanted to be able to put some detail into it and some kind of a design into it, and not have it pixelated and go all crazy. So what are we going to do for this first? I'm going to add a layer, and then what do I want? Not a paste layer. What am I talking about? A generator, a black mask and a generator. I'll get myself right in a minute. And for this one we'll use the UV borders again, and I want to put a faded border on the edge of this to kind of fade out the effect. So let's increase our smoothness a bit and our distance, take down the balance. Oops, don't want to smooth it too much, don't want to smooth it away from the border. There we go, I think that will kind of do. And this I just want to be quite plain really, so let's grab this, and I want a very dull metal into it. let's try this one and see what goes on. Okay, so we've got some shine. This PVC plastic, I want to turn a little darker, so we'll take that down. Going to leave a little colour in it, but not an awful lot. And then what I'm going to do is add a new layer over the top of all of this, but this time I'm going to use a paint layer. No, I'm not. I'm going to add a fill layer, then I'm going to add a black mask, and then I'm going to use painting to do this. So what I want is some sort of face, nothing too exciting. So what I want is my alphas. Where's my alphas? There we go. So I'm just looking down to find something suitable that I could make a kind of an eye out of, or perhaps a line. There'll be something down here somewhere. Come on. There we go. So I'm just going to get front on and expand that out so I can see it properly, and then paste those two in. Of course, I really ought to have done that with symmetry on. There we go. Now the difference here is, let me make those a little bit more central. What I want to do is make these glow. I want them to be bright. So we need a new channel on this layer. So if I select this and go to where do I want to be, texture settings, and under channels, do we have, oh, we already have emissive on. If you don't have emissive on, you can click plus here and select emissive from the list. So let's go back to here, and what I want to do, not here, here, what I want to do here is to enable, or make sure emissive is enabled. So I'm going to turn off everything but so far, and then select my emissive colour. Whoops, that's the base colour. Come on, John. There we go. There's my emissive colour, and I want a kind of a pale blue. There we go. It's not very exciting at the moment, and it's not going to be especially exciting, but I'm just going to add a filter to this, and in this filter I'm going to put a blur, and I'm really going to blur it out so it's not quite so you know, harsh, shall we say. Now I've put relatively little detail in that. It's not the most exciting of detail, but you know, I could have put all sorts of things in there. I could put, you know, patterns and shapes and things, and really maintained the detail, because you know, there's enough texture size in there to accommodate just about anything. Okay, so that's about that really. Let's have a look at him in a rendered mode, and I might actually go and change out my background now for this, or you know, the HDR. It's going to take a little while to warm up, I think. Of course it is, it always does. I don't know why I'm surprised. Come on, warm up. It can't take this long, surely. I have got a lot open on my machine. So let's go to the settings and pick a different one. I quite like this over the clouds one, even though obviously it's not, you know, sensible. I think it looks much nicer than yeah, things with buildings and trees and what it's in. Oops, keep doing this wrong. There we go. I think that's pretty good lighting. Yeah, for the model, that is. Getting some fireflies coming in here as it's rendering and rendering. I think what I might do is stop zooming in and out, because that's not what I meant to do, is just put a clear colour on it so we can see him. There we go. And there you go. He's not bad, I think. I think it's pretty neat actually. I could have put a lot more detail into the modelling. I can put a lot more detail into the texturing, but it's taken me a ridiculously long session to just explain the texturing process that I've done. You can take it much further, of course. As I said, I'm going to provide the download link in the description. If you've got any comments, questions, please ask away. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will talk to you in another session.